Hello, girls and boys. Today we're going to be doing some more learning about microorganisms, and as you can probably see on the screen here, we are learning about mold. So, mold is a type of microorganism, just like yeast was, and we were learning about yeast in our last lessons. Okay? Now, this whole lesson is going to be focusing on mold, and we're going to have, after this video, I've got some information. We're going to go through it, and then you've got some questions you'll need to answer at the end to make sure that you remember and have learned about what we're talking about. Okay, so mold, what is it? Okay, now when I'm talking about mold, I am talking about this kind of gross, disgusting mold. Here's a moldy piece of bread that looks tasty. No, that's right, that type of mold, or perhaps even not that type of mold. Maybe you can see you've seen mold on a wall. This is a mold in someone's bathroom. Oh, their roof is so moldy. That's disgusting. I would not live in that house. That's super gross. Okay, yeah, this is the stuff we're learning about. Now, there's one weird thing about here. We're talking about mold as a microorganism, and we know that microorganisms are microscopic living creatures. Okay, but we can see mold. So how can mold be a microorganism if we can see it without a microscope? Well, quite simply is that we can't actually see one bit of mold by itself. What we're looking at here in this gross picture, and here in this gross picture, is actually thousands and millions of bits of mold all clumped together, and then we can see a big groups of mold. But if there was just one bit of mold there, we wouldn't be able to see it. It's too small. So there's heaps of mold and it's spread. Okay, so mold is a microorganism. We're going to have a bit of a learn about it. I'm going to turn that picture off. I don't want to look at it anymore. We will do some reading about it, and I've got some work to go through with you. So I've got a sheet here. Stop. Sorry, just my Google alarm. I've got a sheet here that I'm going to read through, and as we go through it, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of these points, and at the end, we've got a video I want to show you, and then you'll be able to get into your work. Okay, so molds are a type of fungus. Okay, so you might have heard of fungus. Okay, molds are a type of fungus. Okay, they are a microorganism and are so small that we can only see them with the naked eye when they multiply in numbers. So we can't see them until they grow in big groups. So when you see mold, you're actually seeing a big group of mold. Even if it's only a small piece, it's lots and lots of mold. Okay, and there are many different kinds of mold. Okay, I showed you pictures of just two. Now, molds are usually seen growing on the surface of objects. They are often fluffy or downy in appearance. Okay, so this is like, I'll switch back to our gross picture here. You can see that the mold grows on the surface of things, and it does look a bit fluffy. You might need to turn the resolution up on this video to see the fluffiness, but it is quite fluffy in appearance. Okay, now let's keep going. All right. Mold can be many colors, including green, blue, brown, orange, and yellow. Now, molds play an important role in the environment. Okay, this is something weird. We always think of mold as a bad thing, but some mold, in fact, in many cases, mold is actually a good thing, and we'll learn a bit about that in a sec. They help to break down and recycle dead plants and animal material. This is important because nutrients are returned to the environment for plants and animals to use. This can be seen at home, for example, moldy fruit in a fruit basket or a fluffy substance growing on an open jar of tomato paste or jam. Now, you guys have actually learned a bit about this in all of the sustainability stuff you guys have done, but we know about compost heaps, for example, and how we can put that food in a compost heap, and eventually that food turns into dirt. Okay? In fact, all organic material, even a tree trunk, would eventually turn back into dirt. And then that soil is nice and rich for more fresh new plants to grow. Mold is actually a very, very important part of how things turn back into dirt. Now I'm actually going to show you a video now. Some of you have actually seen this video before. And this is a video of some fruit and vegetables. And this fruit and vegetables is just being left out. And it's just going to go moldy and yucky. All right? And eventually it will start to turn into dirt. Now, you can see in this video that before one of the vegetables turns into dirt, it gets moldy first, and then you can actually see the mold sort of eat away at it, and it shrivels down and sinks into the dirt, okay, and becomes new soil. Okay, so watch for the mold in this video. It's different colors on different things, and then you'll be able to see everything decompose due to the mold. Okay, so I'm going to play that now. Have a look. All right, now that you've seen that gross video as well, I hope you're not having any lunch or fruit time now, so just maybe hold off on that for a bit. But it is very interesting. We can really see the mold spread and grow and then decompose. Not everything there is decomposed. Everything would eventually. Some things decompose faster or slower than others. Okay, some things the mold likes better than others. Okay? Now, let's keep going. Mold spreads by forming reproductive spores. Okay, this is a good question. How does mold actually get onto the fruit? How does it get onto the vegetables? How does it get onto the rotten food we leave in our lunchbox and forget to tell mum or dad about, and then it gets all gross? How does it get there? Well, it spreads from these things, these reproductive spores. Now, this is the word here. You'll need to remember that word, spores. Okay, that are carried in the air. The air contains mold spores which come from the furry growth visible on the surface of objects. Okay. Now, this is also important. Okay, the mold spores, which come from the furry growth visible on the surface of objects, they are in the air. Okay, so even right now in your room, there are tiny mold spores. They're microscopic, you can't see them, but they are there. Okay, and they can spread from those mold spores. Okay, spores can stay alive for long periods of time in a dormant state until the conditions are right, and then they begin to grow. So what this means is the mold spores that are in the air, they're not going to just start growing by themselves. They have to wait for the right conditions. And what do living things need to grow? Well, we know about this from when we did our yeast experiment. Yeast needs certain things to grow. It needs water, it needs food, and it needs warmth. You know, just like we do as people, we need water, food, and warmth to be able to grow, okay, and to live. Now, spores need the same thing, okay? Spores actually need to land on something that's just right, and then they will spread. Okay, and I'll show you what I mean by that. Okay, I'm going to go back to this gross picture. I've got another one here. Here are some pictures here of these tiny little black balls here. Now this is actually mold spores. Okay, now this is zoomed in with a powerful camera here, but these mold spores will eventually just break off and they will blow and float around the air. And one of those mold spores, in fact probably many of those mold spores, will land on something like a sandwich you leave on the counter for too long, or maybe fruit in the fruit bowl, or on everything for that matter. Some of it will land on your table. But for mold to grow, the conditions have to be right. So it needs food, water, and warmth. Okay. So if this mold were to land on, say, your bike, well, there's not really much on your bike it can eat. There's no food there, so it's not going to do anything. It's just going to do nothing. But if it lands on your sandwich and is left there for long enough, it could start to eat the sandwich and grow and spread. If it also has a bit of water and a bit of warmth. If it was really freezing out, for example, mold wouldn't grow very well. Okay? So what I'm actually going to do in that spirit is I'm actually going to do a little bit of an observation of our own. Okay, so what I've got here is I've got a piece of bread. Okay? Not that piece of bread. I'm going to turn that one off. Okay, piece of bread. Okay, now this piece of bread I bought fresh today. Okay? And I am going to leave this out on my counter all night. And while it's left on my counter, some mold spores from the air will land on the piece of bread. Okay? So in the morning, I'm going to get my piece of bread, and I won't be able to see the mold spores because they're microorganisms. They're too small. Okay? Then I need to get a bit of water. I've got a glass of water here. Okay, because we need food. The bread is going to be the food for the mold. And I've got some water here. Now, I'm not going to dump the whole water in there. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to dip my fingers in this water. And then I'm just going to wet the surface of this a little bit. Okay, maybe I'll do another one. Just a little bit. Making it a tiny bit soggy, but not much. Okay, no, I'm not going to eat that. Okay, put a little bit on the other side too. Okay, just in case I forget which side I leave up. Okay, now, so after leaving this piece of bread out all night, mold spores will land on it, and now it'll have food, which is the bread, water, which I just wiped a little bit of water on, okay, and I'm going to put it somewhere warm, but not directly in the sun. If I put it straight in the sunlight, sunlight actually can kill mold. So I'm going to put it in the shade. Like I'll probably just put it in the pantry or something, or on top of my fridge or something like that. But because I don't want it to stink, I'm going to put it in this plastic bag. Okay, so I've got my water on it. Then I'll put it in this plastic bag. And I'll zip it up. Now I have to make sure I leave air in there. It needs a bit of air, so I'm just going to try and zip it up, but keep a bit of air trapped in the bag. Okay. Maybe I'll even put a bit more air in that. There we go. Okay. There we go. I've got my bread that is a little bit wet and going to be left on the counter all night. And then I'll put it in the bag like that afterwards. But for now, I'm going to leave it out. And then next week, we'll see how moldy we can get it. Okay? And at the same time, we can look at the bread that I haven't taken out of my actual fresh bread here. This just came out of there. But this one I'm not going to leave on the counter, so I'm not going to let any mold spores land on this one. So, because I actually want to eat this one. Okay, so I'm not going to leave it out. And then next week, we'll see how much mold grows in 1 week. Okay, mold will generally start to grow between 4 to 7 days. We'll see how it goes. Okay, also depends on how many preservatives are in the bread. Some bread that's really fresh and has no preservatives will get moldy quicker. Preservatives keep the mold away, but are not as good for us. So, it's one of those things. Anyways, Now that we've learned all about mold and we've gone through this whole sheet, we've got some questions to see how much of this you can actually remember. Now let's have a look. So first question is, what is mold? Okay, we did talk about this. Mold is a fungi, okay? And it grows on the surface of objects, okay? Now, then it's like, how does mold reproduce and spread? How does it spread? I talked about these things that float in the air. Do you remember what they were called? Rewind if you don't. Okay, and it spreads when it lands, those things land on something that has the right conditions. Okay? Where can you find mold spores? Ooh, I did say this. Okay, where can you find them? Okay, they're all over the place, everywhere. Then, where does mold grow best? What are the right conditions for mold to grow? Have a think about this. You won't usually see mold in, say, your lounge room, but in an old bathroom or laundry is more likely to have mold. I wonder why. Have a think, write it down. And then last of all, why is mold useful? Mold is actually good. Sometimes it's bad, but it is also good. And that we talked about in the video that we watched. So boys and girls, I want you to answer all these questions. If you do that very quickly, feel free to put some pictures there with them. Try not to do it while you're eating food, because then it might make you a bit grossed out. But otherwise, next week, we've got some more about microorganisms to learn about. So guys, do your best, and I will see you next week with hopefully a moldy piece of bread in a bag. If you really feel motivated, you can try this at home too, but just make sure you ask mum and dad first. All right, guys. Catch you later.